I'm ready.
You got it? Okay.
Hmm.
Hi, this is our
Hi.
first special guest. Hi, this is our first special guest. Deb Williams is our very first special guest on Stay Strong, Stay Safe, Stay Out. And this is a relatively small group. We only have 10 members right now, but it's growing. Good things are happening. And Deb is she's an ideal first special guest because she is a CPA. She is a very, very like-minded woman, and she is a survivor of domestic abuse. So she knows everything, all the things that we've gone through as survivors of domestic abuse. And being a CPA, she brings to the table terrific information that we need. And I was, people who know my story know that I lived a very privileged life. I had big cars and all that stuff. And now, when I left, I moved into a tiny little furnished apartment. That's what I had to do because financially I couldn't afford to maintain the lifestyle that I was used to. I hear like some kind of a static in the background. Do you hear that?
No.
No, no. All
Oh,
right.
I
So
hear
maybe
a
it's
little
just
tiny bit, just a tiny bit, but
all right.
not, it's not enough to bother
So
me.
maybe, okay, good. So, Deb, I want to just go ahead and let you take this over. This is something you do all the time, speaking to small groups and big groups and on stage. So, Financial Karma, I love that name, which you know. Tell us how you came up with the name Financial Karma, and then go ahead and explain a little bit about how finances change, what you've seen, what your suggestions are for those of us who have major lifestyle changes uh, once we elect to move into our
Hmm.
authentic lives.
Well, first, thank you for inviting me on, and thank you for inviting me to be the first guest.
Did you lose?
Hmm. Can you hear me?
I got lost because a phone call came in. So
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no problem. So I love the idea of being in something on the ground floor of its inception. So, making a change to the group, renaming it, going in a different direction, because it's a chance to get in with people at a time when you can grow together. So that's why I thank you very
Exactly.
much for inviting me to do this. So,
You're welcome.
so so my background is, as you said, I'm a CPA. I've been doing it for many years. I finally realized a few years back in my own journey that I didn't like the way I was doing the work I did. And one of the things I've realized is that we can continue to do work that we've done in the past, but we can redefine what that work looks like. So I became much more interested in the psychology behind how people handle their money than I am about the actual choices that they make, although the choices are also sometimes indicative of something going on in that person's life. Um, so that kind of re-energized me to do this work. As to my personal side, I was married for about 30 years, and I was married to a recovering alcoholic, a man who is now a recovering alcoholic. But there was a lot of abuse during the marriage, and I finally left the marriage. To this day, at this point in time, we have been able to maintain and establish a much better relationship. We have become friends. We get along far better than we did, and I know that that has to do with, especially with me, the fact that I was willing to change my behavior in order to. I needed to be able to interact with him. So one way or another, because we have children. So I changed, and by my changing, that changed the relationship. That doesn't happen. You can't predict how that's going to happen, but it does. It does help. Um, because what do we have control over but what we do, not what anybody else does,
Isn't
right?
that a huge lesson? Isn't
And
that a
that
huge
it's true.
lesson?
Yeah, well,
It's
and it
absolutely
also, it
true.
was empowering, and it really made, it's taken me a long time to really embrace it fully, but it really does make me feel much better as a woman and as a human being, that I get to make the choices. Like, these are my choices. They don't all go great. They don't, I still struggle with all the same things I struggled before, but now I struggle less. and I struggle with less intensity. And I think that's an important distinction to make because
Very.
yeah, I don't think we can get rid of all of the things that are part of our characteristics or whatever forever. But I think we can do a lot to mitigate and to make it be better. And that's what I strive
Exactly.
for. It's being on the path,
Exactly.
you know.
So how does that, how do you use where people are on their path, where they are in their process? Uh, how does that tie into their financial psychology? I think it's interesting, especially as a CPA, that you're more interested in the emotional side of money than
Yeah.
the practical side. And so
Yeah.
how did that evolve, and how does that help you and your clients?
Well, I mean, I have my own story of loss, and so when this marriage broke apart, we lost everything at the same time, both of us. Um, later retired, and he has a retirement, but he and I've worked some things out having to do with our divorce and stuff. But we lost, you know, because we weren't both willing to work on the marriage, so that was not a possibility. We had to go that route, and it was called, you know, we hit a rock bottom, like so many people do. I mean, and sometimes we invite that into our life by not doing anything proactively when we do have a chance before it gets to be that
Right,
bad. But that's just what happens.
right.
And I try
Hmm.
not to judge anybody for how their journey has gotten them where they are today. But the point is that you have a choice now. You always have a choice today about how you act going forward. And when it comes to money, we've just been very conditioned to believe things about money that I don't think are true, having to do with our sense of value as human beings. And so you see it all the time in the way the world works out there, what I call, you know, so I kind of divided up in my mind between what's going on out there and then what's going on in here. And I spend most of my energy on what's going on in here, very little on what's going on out there. I try not to pay attention any more than I have to, other than to make new friends and be in community with people. Um, because that's where the power lies for me. I can't do anything about what everybody else is out there doing. I can't do anything about what my friend was complaining about today and saying, you know, her Verizon trying to get a new phone order took like 4 hours. And I'm like, we can't do anything about that. We can only do something about our reaction to that stuff. And I think the more important work is the self-love and self-care that is required to be able to be as that can become your armor against the ways of the world. Not to be negative about it, because I'm not really negative. um, I
You're
don't like a
definitely
lot of
not
things.
negative.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of things I don't like that go on out there, and I get frustrated just like anybody does. But I'm like, I know the limitations of what I can and can't do. I mean, and when we know that better about ourselves and how we run our life, we can make small changes that will give us big results down the road. They take time, it
Exactly.
takes patience, it takes bravery and courage. Remember, we were talking about courage earlier today. You know, I like to wear that as a badge and say, wow, I'm being courageous here, you know?
Yeah.
And when I
Yeah.
say courageous, I mean little things like saying, I'm not going to spend money on that thing. I'm going to save the money and try to, so I can have something that I really need over here. And I'm not going to go shopping to make myself feel better when shopping is not the answer. It's never the solution. Um,
It makes
not
us
that
feel worse when we realize how much money we spent on something we really didn't
ex-
want or need.
exactly. So it's really, it's a shift of the mindset as to the why of why are you going shopping. That's not to say you don't ever go out and buy yourself a treat. It's you do it so much more when you do it more mindfully and you plan it out, it becomes a real treat as opposed to a reaction to
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
your world.
that makes perfect sense. So here's my question: when I'm going to use myself as an
Hmm.
example. When I first left domestic abuse, it was the first time ever that I lived on my own. I was 53. I went straight at 18 from my parents' home to my husband's home, and
Hmm.
I was scared to death And we owned businesses, so we had a fabulous income that I could rely on. There was very little that I wanted that I couldn't just go buy. So once I left, that totally changed. But what I realized, and I think that this is what you're saying, when I started liking myself more, I had less. The word that's coming to my head is need, but it's not really need. I had less interest in just going shopping to spend money.
Right.
When I love myself,
Validation.
I
Outside validation.
outside
Something validating.
validation. Right. I found that instead of going shopping, I could go for a hike and enjoy nature, or I could do something else for myself that was going to improve, like you said, mindset, my personal mindset. So it became easier and easier to let go of frivolously spending money that anymore I didn't have, but I felt more fulfilled. I felt better about myself. I
Right.
enjoyed, that was the beginning of learning who I was and how to love me. Does that make sense to you financially?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And what I too came to realize, something that I never was big on for myself, because I was basically to some level or another out of control or in chaos, is I didn't like budgeting. I didn't like thinking about how I needed to rein in the spending or how I needed to figure out more ways to make money. And so it's pretty daunting to people to think that they've got to sit and think about that thing. But it's kind of like saying, well, I want to eat better, or I want to, I want to move more so that I'm healthier. This is a health issue. To manage your money properly is a health issue, just like many others. And all you really need is the desire to start. You don't need the desire, commitment to, I'm going to make this happen over time, and I'm going to do the right things that are going to give me a benefit, and I'm going to just keep at it. I mean, I say that all the time, and it sounds corny, but you have to invest in this as a commitment to the future of continuing to do it. Even though I fall off the horse or the bike, some days I just do. And some days I don't. Some days I do go. Like, I went shopping this week. I needed a couple pair of pants. And I don't want to make this all about shopping either. So I really look at it like more, either look at either look at the income side first, or look at the expense side first, whichever one and maybe you do a little combination of the two. But the idea is to face it head on and to look at it and to be brave enough to say, I'm in this predicament right now, but I'm also over here. I've got freedom now. Like, I don't have
Right,
this, I
right.
don't have this husband who tells me how much I screw up, because that was actually the day I left my marriage, was the day he said, all of our financial problems are all your fault. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wait a minute, it's not all my fault. But what I came to realize later was, yes, there was a lot of fault on my part. I'm not saying that. But at the time, it was like, I don't need someone else telling me that. I need to figure it out for myself and own it. And once I
There
was
you
able to
go.
do that, that's part of the self-care also, to own the stuff,
Okay,
because it's there.
it's there. It's absolutely there. So let me say this. So a first step is admitting that you need to sit and think about where your life is. What are your priorities? Is that right?
Yep.
What's important to you? Not just how you spend money, not just shopping, but what has to happen and what doesn't. If somebody, especially, well, I'm trying to think of an example. It's not coming. But what are the baby steps? Because I don't think anybody goes, and you don't go from 1 to 10 in one broad jump. You can say, this is where I want to be. This is where I
Oops.
am. And to
Yeah, a
get
baby.
there, I have
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, okay,
what are the first couple baby steps?
one baby step that I would take is find somebody that you either already know, most likely somebody you already know, that you trust, that you can pour out this information to, that you can actually sit down and tell the truth to somebody of what is going on, like how bad it really is. It's amazing to me how I've worked with people for years, and I have I might have to just drag the stuff out because of the shame involved in it. It is, we do feel shame. I'm not going to lie and say that this isn't an uncomfortable thing, but it gives you ultimate freedom to be able to own the stuff, to own your behaviors from the past. And everything is ultimately improvable, fixable. I mean, fixable is not maybe, but improvable. We can make little inroads into making things go away, like a certain debt, or, there's strategies that you can apply. But the very first thing I would do would be to sit down with somebody in a comfortable environment and just sit down and write it all out and say, okay, I'm gonna, you obviously get their permission, ask if you can, do this as an inventory of your financial life and where you stand. Because if you don't know where you stand, you won't know how to fix it, and you won't know how to visualize it getting better. So that would be the very first step. The next step would be to be willing and ready to start working on a budget. And that is, pretty daunting to people. I can tell you, though, I do a lot of 12-step work, and I love 12-step work because it's such a great program, and it's free. And there is a branch of 12-step called Debtors Anonymous. So you can actually go to Debtors Anonymous meetings, and if you live in a big enough place, then you'll find one that will help, that'll actually help you for free walk through this stuff and give you worksheets and stuff. And plus you can find stuff online. You can also find plenty of stuff online as far as budgets go. It's really, budgets aren't magic. What's magic is the willingness to do them and to consistently do them. Like maybe update them every month or every quarter, or just to look at the reality of what you're facing, and being brave enough to say, I'm going to face this, because the flip side of it is you're already experiencing it, whether you're facing it or not. So you might as well face it. That's the thing. It's already happening.
Great. Yeah. You're living it. Whatever it is, you're already living it. So
exactly.
Bring the elephant out from under the carpet. But I do have to say that word budget, oh my gosh, it's like
I know. Spending plan, wish list. I look at the budgeting process as being a way to become authentic about what your desires and your needs really are. So needs and wants, and obviously when if things are worse than they've been, then you're going to have to focus more on just the straight up needs. But it's really important to start to see you as separate from money. You are not money. Your inherent worth has nothing to do with whether you are rich or poor. It has everything to do with how are you contributing in the world, and how are you contributing to your own life to make it better, so that you're showing up the best way. Because what happens is it becomes sort of a miracle of sorts when you start showing up. And you've heard people talk about this, like, smile, practice smiling. You talk about that, actually. You say, I smile and I practice smiling, and isn't it amazing? People smile back and things start to happen. Yes. Our choices to do something differently than we've done before do change how it plays out for us. And it may take a little time. It may not seem like big things, but they add up, just like saving pennies.
Exactly. Yeah. Well,
and nickels.
I taught my grandkids, when you pick something up, a nickel or a penny or a dime on the ground, I don't care if it's head up or heads down. It's money. And I taught my grandkids to say, thank you, God, because it's prosperity. It's something you didn't have before. And, there's that thing about every, pennies add up to dollars, add up to hundreds of dollars. And it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah. Like, so, I have a friend who has a thing. She calls it a POM jar, POM. And it's just a jar that you set up, and you can write on it. You could decorate it. You can do whatever you want with it. And it's peace of mind. And all you do is you try to put your spare change in it. And in my case, I don't put pennies in there because I want it to fill up and be worth enough that I could do something with it or save it or do whatever it is I think I
Right.
need to do.
Yeah.
Another thing I do is, I carry a small bill in my purse at all times as an emergency thing, and it also makes me feel better, like a $10 bill or a $20 bill, so that you know that you have that there if there's a need at the moment. And then you always have to
You're never
replace it.
right. Right. That's
That
interesting.
way these are little small things that are telling or reminding you that you are worthy of being prosperous, and that prosperity too it is about money, but it's also not about money. So that sounds crazy to
Right.
say it, but it's about
But it's
it's
absolutely true.
yeah, what I call the desired effect is to say I am, if I were living in a perfect state of mindfulness and bliss about money, I would be totally detached from my money. I would not have attachment to money itself. That's the goal, is to not feel attached to it. And so there's that flip side of people who have way more than they need, and they use it as they use it to make themselves feel better when other things aren't working, because they're not doing the right things to actually be happy in life and be mission driven. Really, you can survive on a lot less money if you're doing work in your life, or doing things that you love. You don't necessarily need that much money to do things you
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And
That's
I do,
true.
and I have a lot less money than I did. And I've also pared. You've heard me talk about it. I've pared down a lot about how much stuff I have, and I feel so much freer. Freedom is
Yep.
something you can't buy freedom. You
No,
really
you can't.
can't.
Yeah. And that's what, for me and for what I encourage people who listen to my podcast and whatever is, when when I left my situation, when I got divorced, I didn't get much of anything. He got the business, I got the house, but the house, there wasn't much money in it. It was whatever. But I got me. I got me, and that is worth so much more than any money or alimony or anything else, because I was lost. I'd been totally washed away. I'd allowed myself to be washed away.
Yep.
So, and when you figure out who you are and the life that you want to live, and when you begin on that path, that's so fulfilling. And you'd find that you don't need as much. You don't need as much money. You don't need as much stuff, and that's huge. That is so
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah, and I mean that can also be part of a strategy when you're trying to dig out from under things, is you incorporate trying to have less. As you can sell things, you can give things away. There's energy in giving it away too. I mean, I give to get. I
Yeah.
That's where the financial karma thing comes from. It's like I've had all kinds of really nice things happen because I have been more willing to just give freely, not because I have to, not because anybody says I have to, because I choose it. And so this
Yeah.
idea of
And that's
choice is really important in all of this conversation. And it's choice to not feel abundant in in how you're living your life. And that abundance does include money, but it doesn't have to be only about money, you
that's
know?
right. Exactly right. That's right. An abundant life doesn't mean you have to be wealthy. It just means that
Exactly.
you're enjoying what you've got. And I've discovered when I really appreciate and enjoy what I've got, I get more. Because when you
Exactly.
enjoy what you've got, more comes. It's what you said. More things have come to you.
Yeah.
Now that's, I think that's a universal law. I think that's just how it works. It's not woo-woo.
Yeah.
It's not weird. It's just how it works.
Yeah, and it's funny because I had a conversation. I had this property that I had managed to hold on to through everything, but it really became a real noose around my neck, and it was financially holding me hostage, and it was a huge debt. It was very scary. And I've been very scared about my finances. So I totally understand somebody saying, "Well, I'm afraid." And all I can say about that is, "Okay, I hear you. You're afraid. Okay, now let's do something." Because there's no point in lying about the fear that we feel, because we need to own that, and then we can possibly break through that by having somebody validate us to say, "I'm afraid." So anyway,
Yeah.
I finally had to sell this house, and I knew that it was going to be hard, and it took me the better part of this year to really make it happen. And I told a friend that we had ended up fighting, the owner and I, or the new owner. Ended up fighting over $2,000, and I was very mad about it. But I also knew that this was meant to be. I needed to sell this house. And as you know, Mickey, you know this part of my story is 3 weeks after the house got sold, the Hurricane Florence hit the area where I owned the house, and boy, was I relieved. So I had done the right thing, and holding out for that $2,000 would have been wrong. That would have, if I'd broken the deal over that. Well, then on my birthday, a friend strokes me a check for $2,000. Somebody who had money, but who knew my story. Now, I can't predict that that would happen for somebody, but boy, what a nice surprise it was that somebody heard what I was going through. And so she clearly was trying to right things in the world. And I think the world will do that. And that's part of the laws of attraction and things. I think the world will right itself, and you don't know how that's going to play out, but I think you have to be open to it. And I had no expectation.
And not try to control it.
Yeah, I had no expectation I was going to get that $2,000 back. None, zero.
Wow.
I mean,
wow.
I was happy. I was happy when the hurricane came through. I said, "There's karma for you," because all I could think of at the time was, look what he invited on himself, because he could have been a whole lot nicer about it. But I decided I was letting that go too. And then this thing happened. So it's like, wow, this is great.
Yay, that's so cool.
I know.
So, Deb, you have given so much great information here. When people watch this, how can they contact you? Your company is called Financial Karma.
It's Financial Karma Coach. I have the best way to reach me at this point, because I'm revamping what I'm doing, is to reach out to me by my email, which is debcpa9@gmail. So it's Deb for the first part of my name, cpa9@gmail.com. And
the number 9. The
number 9. Yep. And you can put that. I can post that in the group. I'll put that in there. And and I'm always happy to grab a few minutes of conversation with somebody, just to see what their situation is, just to help them get jump started a little bit. But you have to, you have to decide. I'm going to believe in myself here, and I'm going to work. I'm going to get this worked out, and I'm going to stick with the plan, and I'm going to come up with a plan. And it is all doable. And if you see the bravery in what you're doing, and use that as that way to shield yourself and keep going, it does work over time. It just does.
Absolutely. Well, I know that to be true. And as anybody watching this video can see, and anybody who listens to your podcast or does anything with you, they know that you are the least CPA-ish CPA I've ever met.
Yeah.
Because usually they're kind of black and white, kind of focused, narrow, not open, not aware of universal law, not understanding law of attraction, not understanding that abundance doesn't just mean money. So you are you're just absolutely perfect person in my circle of influence. I'm so glad to have you here, and I appreciate you taking time talking with this group.
Yeah, and actually, and also for the group too, if you tag me in the questions and stuff in the group, I'll do my best to answer questions. I don't give advice as a substitute for having somebody else who you have for your own tax person or whatever. Right. But I can give general kind of advice about how to see things differently than maybe what you're seeing, or just thoughts about what your options are out there.
Perfect. Well, I know that anybody who contacts you can trust whatever information they get back, because you're ethical, you're straightforward, and you don't.
Yeah, I try.
You understand. Well, you've lived it. That's what makes the difference.
It does make a big difference.
Thank you. Yeah, it does.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna hopefully be able to edit the beginning of this video so that we can have it be just the conversation. It's one of my techno challenged. I don't know how to do that yet. So
yet's a good word.
Yet's a good word.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Deb,
we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. Talk soon. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate you being here. Bye-bye.
Sure. Take care.